Hi guys, it's Billy again, back with some more crochet information. Now I know I said that I was going to go ahead and either jump to patterns or the first project, but in between making the last video and this video, first I'm going to give my disclaimer. Never made a set of training videos like this before, so please bear with me. If you have any questions, any suggestions on how to make my videos better, please let me know. I will do my best. But with that said, I have decided that I'm going to throw in hopefully a quick little lesson here, because it is going to be one of the big determining factors on your project and the size that your project comes out, and if it's actually going to fit you when you're done with it, if it's something like a hat or a scarf or something like that, or even if you're making something like a blanket or doilies for a table. Okay, and that is called gauging, or what they refer to as gauging. What is gauging? Gauging is actually gauging the size of your finished project. Now there's a lot of things in there that's going to determine the size of your project, okay? And I want to go over those really quick with you, because I know that at some point you're going to make something and you're going to be really disappointed because it's either going to be too tight, or it's going to be too large, or it's not going to be the size that you want. And gauging it's a simple concept, but then again, in the end, it's really not that simple, because while I'm going to explain it to you, you're still going to have questions and be like, how do I know? Well, the how do I know comes with the just doing a lot of crochet, so that you can gauge on your own when you look at things and things that you've made in the past, so that you know what size they're going to be like in the future. But we're going to go over that. So when you do make your projects, hopefully they're going to come out the size that you want them to come out. But I decided this was an important step, so that when you do make your first project, that you can know that it's at least going to be somewhat in the range of what you want it to be. Okay, now as we discussed in the previous video, you have a crochet hook, and let me grab a couple of them here so that you can see the size difference in the crochet hooks. Okay, now I've got several of them, so I'm just going to grab one out of here. As you notice, as we talked about, there's different sizes, and with these different sizes, like this one right here, I don't know if you can see it, but it's an N. So the larger the letter on it is, the larger that the hook is on the end. And then of course as you go down, the smaller that they get to be. Now in the other lesson, if you watched, or if you didn't get to see that, I also talked about when you buy yarn, if you look on here, it's going to have a section on here where you can take a look. And on this one, it's going to be, well, let me see if I can grab another one, because it is on here. I just don't happen to see it. Oh, it's right here. This one's a little bit different, and it's harder to read than the other one. But right here, this is going to tell you for your crochet and for your knitting what size needle you want. Or, I'm sorry, needles for knitting, hooks are for the crochet. It's going to tell you what size hook that you want. I am going to actually grab this over here, because, well, you probably still can't see it that well. You can see it a little bit better. Okay, so right here, this tells you right there what size hook that you want to go with your yarn. Okay, now like I said, you can use, this is the recommended one for the yarn that they're using, so that it's somewhat in the ballpark. Okay, however, when you look at a pattern on there, one of the first things of information you're going to have is your gauging information. What does the gauging mean? It means that if I take my yarn and I make so many stitches across and so many stitches high, it'll tell you that it should measure a certain amount. Okay, so like if I turn around and this is not part of the crochet lesson, so we're gonna I'm just gonna do this really quick. Okay, so I'm gonna go through and I'm just gonna make a chain stitch right now. Okay, and I'm going to make a very simple one, and it's not going to be that hard. But when you come across a pattern, and it'll say if you make so many single crochets across and so many single crochets high, you should end up with, say, like on this one, it'll tell you that it should be 2 inches by 2 inches. Okay, and that's if you use this yarn with this hook, or the yarn and the hook that they specify in the pattern. Okay, now that's all good and dandy for that, because generally you're going to be in the ballpark somewhere. If you do like 10 over and 10 up, and you have your 2 by 2 square, and that's what your pattern says, then that's fantastic. The problem that I have with that is when you go to make your pattern, the biggest problem that I have is that you have different type of crocheters. And when I mean different types, excuse me, is that I tend to crochet my stitches very loosely. Okay, so when I go to gauge it, okay, and it tells me to go 10 stitches over and 10 stitches high to get a 2 by 2 square, generally when I do my 10 stitches, they're larger than the 2 inches, even though I'm using the recommended yarn and the recommended hook. Okay, now my daughter, who I taught how to crochet, she holds her yarn the same way, she works her hook the same way as I do, but she tends to crochet very tight. So when she goes to measure her gauges from the pattern onto what she does, hers actually, if it says 10 stitches across and 10 stitches high is going to make a 2 by 2 square, hers are generally smaller. Okay, so while you can learn how to correct this by either crocheting tighter or crocheting looser to match that gauge, that's something that can be done. I just find it very hard because I get into a natural relaxing, I'll be watching a movie, I'll be talking to somebody, and I'm just crocheting away, and I tend to crochet how I crochet. Okay, so I don't tend to purposely make things over tight or over loose. It's just the way that I have. Now, there are on certain projects where I will stop and have to concentrate and make things really tight when I need to make sure there's no gaps and things aren't being able to come through the yarn. Like if you're making toys or dolls for children, you don't want all the stuffing coming out. So I have to purposely concentrate to get those stitches very tight. But on a blanket, mine are very, I won't say loose, but they're not really tight stitches either. So the gauging is going to make your patterns bigger, or they're going to make them smaller. Two of the biggest factors of that is what type of yarn you use. Is it thin yarn? Is it thick yarn? Is it what they call bulky or chunky yarn? I don't have any right off the bat. They're on the other side of the wall. But they have really thick yarn, or they have, like the worsted weight, which is this is just a number 4 on here, or they have thinner. So if you pick a thinner yarn with a smaller hook, your pattern's going to be smaller. If you pick a thicker yarn with a bigger hook, your pattern, of course, is going to get bigger. And then, of course, if I find that my project, I want this yarn, but it's still too small, then you can actually pick up a bigger yarn. Now, if you look at the difference, this was made with this hook here, which is a size K hook, okay? But if you take the N and you go the N in here with the loose stitching, you should be able to see the difference in the stitch size here. Okay, let me do 1 or 2 more. It's very hard for me to do this with such a big hook because this yarn wasn't really made for this, but it'll work, okay? So if you notice up here, the stitches that were made with the K on this end are a lot tighter. The ones that were made with the N, they're a lot looser. Okay, I don't know if you can see that really good, but trust me, they are. So if I make them with the N hook, it's going to come out quite a bit bigger, whereas the K one, if I stick with the K, then it'll come out smaller. So this is going to be the main factor in how big your project is going to be. And if you go with the recommended ones that they have in the pattern, I try to stick with the recommended ones, but when I'm using a different size yarn than what is in their pattern, then I have to take that into consideration. Because if they're saying use a K hook and you'll get your 2x2 square, or however they want to gauge it off. Then you're going to end up with one size. But if I want to make it smaller because it's for my granddaughter and not my daughter, then I'll actually just grab a smaller hook, which makes the project smaller. So it's not going to give me a 2x2 square. Or if I want it to be a lot looser and stuff, I'll just grab a bigger hook. So that's what your gauging is, and that's what they mean by it. We probably won't go into it a whole lot more, other than I want to make sure that you understand that there's more than just what is on the yarn and your hook size that will allow you to make your projects bigger or smaller. Because you do have to factor in if you crochet tight or if you crochet loose, because that is going to be one of the biggest things that determines your project and the size. So at this point, yeah, you're left with a lot of questions. Well, how big do I know that it's going to be? I'm going to be really honest with you. You're just going to have to make some stuff and see yourself if you crochet tight or if you crochet loose. And when you make a project and you use the hooks on here, or the crochet hook and the yarn and the recommended size, is your measurements the same as what their measurements are? If they are, you're going to be great and you're going to be lucky. But like I said, if you're a loose crocheter, you're probably going to end up with a bigger hat or a bigger scarf, whereas my daughter would end up with a smaller one, because that's also going to factor into how much yarn you buy. Okay, so whereas I crochet loosely, it does take up more yarn because my project is bigger and my stitches are looser. My daughter, where she ends up crocheting very tight, it means that her stitches are tighter, so she uses less yarn. So where she can get away with a skein, I may need a skein in a little bit. Okay, so keep in mind your gauging on here, your hook sizes, and honestly, we're just going to make some stuff, and you're going to have to see how close you come to what the pattern says or what the skein of yarn says, because your skein of yarn, along with hook sizes, it'll tell you how to measure your rows, so that you know what your gauging is. It'll tell you, so many rows up or so many rows down with the hook and the yarn, so you know if it's going to be about the same size. But that is something that I really wanted to cover, because a lot of you guys are going to have issues saying, well, I made this hat, but this hat is too big. But as we go along crocheting, I'm also going to show you how you can adjust sizes, so that when you make your own projects, you can adjust them to be bigger or smaller. It's really not that hard at all, and it's stuff that we are going to cover. But I did want to make sure that I stop and talk about the sizing and the gauging really quick. So if you look at this video, I hope it makes sense. If you have any questions, like always, leave me a comment and I'll try to get back to you. Thank you very much.